The house never stopped setting the table for six. Even after the years dragged on, after the police stopped calling, after the neighbors stopped asking, someone always folded that last napkin, always set that one extra plate. Her seat, untouched, waited like the rest of them were just in denial or hope, dressed as routine. There was still a lipstick stain on the edge of her coffee cup, tucked away in the back of the cupboard. Still a cardigan draped over the chair in the den, where her perfume had long since faded into dust. The kind of quiet that followed her was the kind that stayed, like a draft beneath the door, like silence that pressed into your ribs. Every room still held the shape of her absence. And for 14 years, they told themselves stories that maybe she'd cracked under the weight of it all, the debt, the accident, the endless nights, that maybe she'd met someone and started over, that maybe they had never really known her. But then the car was found, pulled from a lake that hadn't frozen in a decade, its windows rolled down, its doors rusted shut, and inside in the glove compartment, a photograph sealed in plastic, untouched by water or time. Her smile, the same one that used to greet them at the door, the same one Ethan saw in his sleep. But it wasn't just the photo. It was what came next. Because that name on the lease wasn't hers, but the signature was. And that's where the story begins. With a son who never stopped looking, and the truth surfacing at last, soaked in silence and waiting to be seen. The table was set for 6, but they only ever needed 5. A lasagna, still steaming from the oven, waited beneath a soft halo of kitchen light. Glasses of ice water sweated quietly, forks aligned, napkins folded the way she used to do it, tight corners, pressed flat. For a moment, it looked like a normal evening in a normal home, until you noticed the silence. 4 grown children and their father, seated around a table, trying not to look at the empty chair. Ethan sat stiffly across from the seat she'd always claimed. His fingers grazed the envelope in his lap like it might vanish if he let go. 14 years. And it had come down to a single manila folder. He hadn't even told them yet. Not all of it. Not the part that mattered. Dan, their father, was the first to speak. "What time did Ethan say he'd be here?" "I'm right here," Ethan said, finally lifting his gaze. They all turned. Mark, ever the practical one, leaned back with crossed arms. Leah blinked but said nothing. Ellie adjusted the placemats with trembling fingers. And Aldi, the youngest, we didn't understand why the air had turned so heavy. So fast. Ethan opened the envelope and said it out loud. They found Mom's car. Every head turned. A stillness wrapped around the room like fog. Et continue, barely above a whisper. Miller's Lake. Submerged. 14 years underwater. Forks were set down. Napkins folded again by nervous hands. But no one spoke. Dan's face went pale. His body rigid in the wheelchair that had defined him since the fall. The stroke, the day, everything had begun to unravel. Leah whispered. "Was she?" "No body," Ethan said. The car was empty. It should have ended there. They'd always believed she left. Couldn't handle the weight of the world on her back. 5 kids. A broken husband. A quiet vanishing. One Sunday trip to the grocery store that turned into forever. But what Ethan pulled out next unraveled everything. A plastic evidence bag. Inside, a photograph. Her face. Smiling. Still dry. Still perfect. After all those years in the lake. Like it had waited for them. Like she had. Another bag followed. A driver's license. Catherine Dawson. No mistaking it. And then the receipts. A lease agreement. Warped by water damage. But legible enough. The name, Elizabeth Carter. But the signature was hers. New question. The loopy C. The gentle slant of her R's. The little flourish at the end. I've seen her write this exact way since I was a kid. Ethan whispered. Shopping lists. Field trip forms. She signed this. Mark leaned forward. You think she faked her own name? She didn't fake the signature. Ethan said. And then, the detail no one had noticed until he said it out loud. The other item found in the car. A pair of men's sunglasses. Etched faintly along the side. A single name. Ronald. Silence fell again, heavier this time. Dan exhaled like the wind had been knocked from him. Your mother didn't know anyone named Ronald, he said. But Ethan wasn't so sure, and the lease dated months after she disappeared said otherwise. She had signed it. Somewhere out there. She'd become someone else. But that wasn't the end. Because inside that lease was more than just a name. It was a key. To a door they never expected to find. And behind that door was the first real piece of the truth. A truth that had been sinking all this time. Waiting for someone brave or desperate enough to pull it from the dark. The address on the lease led to a warehouse no one talked about. Not in the city. Not really near it either. Just past the last blinking streetlight. Where the road began to forget it had ever been paved. The kind of place you'd miss unless you were looking for it, or unless you were desperate enough to follow a name your mother never told you she'd used. Ethan sat in his car a long time before getting out. The building looked like it hadn't decided if it was still open or long since abandoned. One lone bulb flickered over the side entrance. A rusted sign above the loading bay still read quality furniture refurbishing, but the windows had been blacked out from the inside. And no one had refurbished anything in years. Still, someone was inside. He could feel it. The side door creaked open before he could even knock. A man stepped out old. Wiry. Wearing a jacket too thin for the cold and eyes too sharp to be friendly. He cradled a steaming mug and watched Ethan like he already knew why he was there. You lost. Ethan smiled thinly. Actually, I'm looking for warehouse space. Thought this place might be not for rent. I figured. Just. Curious who owns it. A Pose. Doss family. Harvey. Now. Used to be his dad's. Raymond Doss, Ethan asked. Pretending the name was only vaguely familiar. That's when it changed. The man's posture didn't shift. His voice didn't rise. But the warmth vanished. And when Ethan asked too softly, too deliberately, "Does the name Elizabeth Carter mean anything to you?" The man didn't blink. Just stared. Then stepped closer. close enough that Ethan could smell the bitter edge of coffee and cold metal on his breath. "You want ghosts," he said. Voice low and cracked like gravel underfoot. She didn't want to be found. He didn't say another word, just turned and disappeared into the dark behind the door. Ethan didn't sleep that night. He sat at his kitchen table with the lease spread out beneath a lamp, the photograph beside it like a shrine. He could still hear the guard's voice echoing in the back of his mind. She didn't want to be found, but it wasn't a threat. Not exactly. It sounded more like a warning, like she hadn't vanished, like someone had erased her. By morning, he'd made the call. Detective Vans answered on the fourth ring, his voice thick with sleep. "Ethan, you all right? I need to tell you something." And he did. He told him everything: the lease, the building, the guard, the name Elizabeth Carter. And then, almost as an afterthought, the man's sunglasses, the ones they found in her car. There was a name etched on them. "I didn't see it at first." "What name?" Vans asked. "Ronald." Silence stretched long over the line. "You sure positive? That name's in our system." Vans finally said, "Ronald McKellan. Used to be one of Raymond Doss's runners. Not much of a record, but enough for a pattern." Ethan sat straighter, his pulse climbing. She signed that lease under a fake name, and Ronald was listed as the co-signer. Same warehouse, same timing. Vans exhaled, slow and tight. "Ethan, what you just gave me, that turns this into something else entirely." "What do you mean?" "I mean, this isn't just a cold case anymore." A pause. Then, "Quieter. Stay away from that place. Do not go back. You understand me?" "But..." "No. Listen to me. If she was involved with Doss, even unwillingly, this isn't just about someone running off. This is about someone hiding, maybe from something a lot worse than we thought." Ethan closed his eyes. "Detective, I don't think she was hiding from us." Another silence. "I think she was hiding for us." Outside, the street was quiet. A wind moved through the trees with a kind of reverence, like it too had overheard something sacred, something dangerous. Ethan didn't know what he'd stumbled into, but he knew it wasn't over. And whatever had tried to stay buried was starting to surface. The warehouse stood like a husk in the pre-dawn gray, its windows still boarded, but its secrets gone. Ethan parked exactly where he had the night before, gravel crunching beneath the tires like teeth grinding in a dream. Detective Vans said nothing at first. Just watched the building, head slightly tilted, eyes narrowing like a man trying to remember something that hadn't happened yet. Inside, the air was still warm from lights that had been shut off just hours earlier, but the walls cold, stripped bare, cables snaked from the ceiling, like veins cut open. Rows of clean rectangles in the dust, marked where furniture had once stood. They left in a hurry. Vent murmure. Someone spooked them. It didn't take long to see what had been left behind, or maybe forgotten. A single photograph, wedged beneath an overturned desk, slightly curled. Its edges were damp. as if touched by fingers that had second thoughts. Ethan picked it up. A cargo ship dark against the dawn, moored at some unknown dock. Its name painted bold and unapologetic on the hull eastern horizon. On the back, scrawled in, quick, upright handwriting. Departing 4/12. To A. M. Elizabeth C. Ronald M. That was the moment the air changed. Like the room itself had exhaled, something that had been holding its breath for 14 years. Ethan didn't speak. He didn't need to. Vans was already on his phone. Voice low and clipped. Get eyes on every outbound vessel tagged under DOS-affiliated shipping companies. Focus on Eastern Horizon. If it's not gone yet, it will be. But it had already left. 12 hours early. No storm. No warning. Just vanished. Like she had. And that wasn't the end. Because back at the station, after 2 hours of stone-faced silence, the guard they'd arrested finally leaned forward in his chair and said, "She didn't leave you. She was traded." His voice cracked. Just once. Like even he hadn't meant to say it aloud. Catherine Dawson, or Elizabeth Carter, hadn't run away. She'd been swallowed. The name Ronald M. came up again, this time paired with terms like coercion, false identity, debt, slavery. Vans pressed hard. The man cracked again. "There's a system," he said. "An app Ronald uses. GPS. Messaging. Surveillance." He scribbled login credentials onto a notepad. The letters shaky, like maybe he wasn't sure if he was saving a family or dooming himself. They gave it to the tech team. No one breathed as the screen came to life. An ocean. A blinking dot. Southbound. Still moving. And from a camera feed deep in the ship's hull, a room. Dimly lit. Rows of desks. Women. Heads down. Faces aged not just by time but by silence. Ethan stepped closer to the screen. The woman in the back, her face half in shadow, looked up. A scar along her cheek. A hesitation in her eyes. Then recognition. "Mom," he whispered. But the camera feed blinked and went black. The story continued, but in a way no one expected. The room was silent. Except for the low hum of computers and the faint buzz of fluorescent lights overhead, Detective Vans stood beside Ethan. Arms crossed. Eyes fixed on the screen. The tech's fingers moved like a pianist, swift, deliberate, pulling the camera feeds one by one from the encrypted app. And then, it blinked to life. A pale blue dot, hovering over a vast expanse of ocean, pulsed steadily on the screen. The name beside it, Eastern Horizon. Silent. Moving. One by one. Grainy feeds loaded static-washed views of rusted corridors. Narrow bunks. Mechanical rooms, clanking with the rhythm of ocean travel. Then, a frame froze. A room. Fluorescent lit. No. Windows. Women sat at workstations. Their faces downturned. Their movements repetitive. Si labeur. And in the far left corner, a woman with her back to the camera. Slender. Hunched. Her hair was darker now, streaked with silver, shoulders thin, hands still moving. The camera jolted slightly. She turned. There were no gasps, no cries, just the sudden, sharp intake of breath from Ellie, barely audible. "Mum." The word barely broke the air, like dust drifting from a forgotten attic. Dan's wheelchair creaked as he leaned closer. Eyes wide and wet. Leah's hand went to her mouth. Aldi leaned against the wall, suddenly very still. And Ethan, he didn't blink. He didn't move. The only thing moving was the silent tremble in his fingertips. It had been 14 years, but none of them had forgotten her face. But the room didn't erupt in joy. No celebration. Only grief. Grief reawakened in a new shape. The grief of seeing the truth, but not being able to touch it. Dan's hand rested on the edge of the screen, as though it might pass through. "I should have known," he whispered. Ethan turned to him, confused. "I should have seen it. The day she disappeared." Dan's voice was hoarse, hollowed by time. She was drowning long before she vanished. The room fell quiet again. Dan exhaled, the kind of exhale that drags 20 years behind it. After the stroke, "I couldn't work. The insurance barely covered anything. Hospital bills, rehab, feeding 5 kids." He swallowed. "She said she'd found someone. A man who could help with debt. Said she'd handle it." He looked away, eyes fogging. "I believed her. I wanted to believe she could fix it, that she could carry all of it. I let her carry too much." Leah wiped her cheeks with a trembling hand. "You think that's how she got pulled in?" Dan nodded. "You don't find men like Doss. They find you, especially when you're desperate." Ellie looked back at the screen. "She never stopped protecting us." No one replied, but the truth settled in, like dust on forgotten shelves. There was never a goodbye, never a note, only silence. But now, they knew. She hadn't left them. She had been taken. And even in captivity, even in isolation, she had survived. Because sometimes the only way to hold on to love is to disappear with it. There she was, not just alive, but aware. Looking through that camera, not just seen back. And in that final frame, something changed. Not in the feed, not in the room, but in the silence behind Ethan's eyes. All these years, he had been chasing a ghost. But ghosts don't look into cameras. Ghosts don't mouth words like warnings. This wasn't a haunting. It was a message. And then, the screen went dark. Whatever's happening out there, it isn't over. The ship is still moving. And so is the truth. If this story stayed with you, let us know below. Like, share, and subscribe not just for the next part, but for the next piece of the truth, when it surfaces. Long pause. Soft breath. She didn't leave them. She was taken. And something or someone is still trying to keep her buried. We'll be watching. Together,